will briefly explain how to use the chat generator. This program runs on Python. So let's start by installing Python. Download it from the official Python website. You can just take the latest version, like 3.10. My computer is running 64-bit Windows, so I'll install the 64-bit version. Make sure to check the Add Python to Path checkbox during installation. Now, let's download the Langchain LLM Sample program from Github. Click Code and select Download Zip to obtain the zip file. Select Download Zip to obtain the zip file. Python installation is now complete, and I've also extracted the downloaded program files. First, let's take a look at the README. Open the command prompt by pressing the Windows key and typing cmd. Navigate to the folder where you've extracted the program files. It's a bit tricky to navigate to the exact location. Now, we need to install the necessary Python libraries. I hope this is sufficient. The installation should be done now. The necessary libraries are listed here. and I'll add any missing ones later. Next, you'll need to get the OpenAI API key. On the OpenAI website, log in and go to your account information to generate a key. If you don't have an account, sign up for one. Currently, there's a free trial for 3 months or up to $18 in usage. After the trial period, or after you've used up the $18 worth of API usage, you'll need to pay a monthly fee to continue using the service. I'll have to blur it out, but register your API key in the config.py file. Now, let's make the file extension visible so it's easier to see. Paste the API key you got earlier into this file. With this, we're now ready to use the program. The appasync.py file launches the program, but its image isn't displayed properly. Let's look at the README on the website. Now, if this window is active, you're good to go. You'll need to create vector data from the scenario, so let's load the sample scenario. Let's run it again. When installing libraries, sometimes additional ones need to be installed or some might not be needed anymore, depending on when you downloaded the program. If you enter the correct keywords, the AI will generate related conversations using vector data from the scenario. Just follow the sample inputs provided. By pressing this button, you should see conversations and actions being generated. This scenario's vector data was created from keywords, and it's quite large in size. We've made vector data from 4 different scenario text files. The input data changes depending on the matching information. This is what the output looks like. The AI's behavior in this video is different due to differences in the input settings. There's a temperature setting in the OpenAI library interface. If you set it to 0, you'll get the same output for the same input settings. As you increase the temperature towards 1, the randomness of the output will increase as well. Let's finish this test program. We've already created the vector data using this program. Now, let's move on to the program that creates conversations between NPCs. We'll use the App Chat Creator Python file. This library is for reading and writing data in formats like CSV and databases. Once this is up and running, select the FAISS index folder that we created earlier. Next, in the input CSV parameter, we'll load the second sample scenario. We're using the sample script provided. This is what an NPC conversation might look like when it is complete. You can see the progress of the scenario, the location of the conversation, and who is talking. Then, you can input what topic they are talking about. There should be 5 conversation data points outputted in a specific format. This output will be based on a naming scheme with consecutive numbers. This process might take some time. In the meantime, I'll briefly explain the code. First, there's the prompt, which is the message sent to the AI in the form of a request. Here's the prompt for generating casual NPC conversations. The instruction is to generate 4 lines of NPC conversation on everyday topics or even regional stories. Emotions will also play a part, as stated earlier. These prompts are based on certain keywords. This CSV file contains these 3 parameters. As for output from the AI, request that looks like this. But it ought resemble this format. For example, this conversation involves an NPC first and an NPC second talking back and forth 4 times. It seems like this is a conversation between 2 NPCs about happy topics. The next conversation is also about a happy subject. There are conversations about a restaurant, the weather, and the library. Another conversation, this time involving anger, is available. There are conversations about anger, then a sad theme will come next. This is how the output will be formatted, so the conversation can be extracted if needed. By incorporating the generated conversations into a game program, you can easily display speech bubbles or place a large number of NPCs in the game. This should be a good way to use this. Now, here's the conversation generated for the sad theme. The sad conversation mentions a lost cat, and the sound of a crying cat in the night is no longer heard. With conversations like this, it's possible to create a mini story or implement small events in a game. As for the details in the code, if you can understand it, simply examining the prompt and the program that was run should suffice. There's another prompt prepared that's similar in structure, but intended for a different purpose. It's the prompt used in the test program we tried earlier. The output is in the same form, but it's designed for a player to interact with NPCs. It allows the player to respond to the NPCs they're talking to. So, by tweaking the prompts or adding new output formats for AI, you can create different outputs. However, the AI might return slightly different outputs than requested. That's why there's some processing in place to ensure that the format doesn't break when a response is different than expected. For instance, a function called cycle is used. Instead of directly calling the OpenAI, it calls the LangchainLLM library, which stores the data returned from OpenAI in a variable called response. At this point, the data is still in text format. Occasionally, the AI might append or prepend lines like "sorry, I can't do this" to the output it returns. So, the format is checked and, if it's not correct, the output is marked as decode error and a retry plus flag is sent to request to resend. If the same output is received again, it's recommended to add something to the prompt. The history field changes, so it's worth checking. The maximum number of retries is set to 3. If the function still can't get a properly formatted output after 3 retries, it will return an error. However, as long as you're using the current version of OpenAI, it's unlikely that you'll encounter any issues. That's a brief rundown of how to use the NPC conversation generating script. If you have any questions or requests for customizations or additional features, feel free to contact me on Twitter. Thank you and have a great day.